the miter saw. It's one of the most useful tools in the entire array of power tools. A versatile cutting machine used where tight corners, precise angles, and fine finishing work are required. Chances are, if you're serious about woodworking, you'll become very familiar with miter saws and what a valuable asset they can be in the shop or on the job. Today we're going to take a look at miter saws from the most important angle, the angle of safety. From outward appearances, the typical miter saw may look relatively harmless, but looks can be deceiving. With powerful motors and spinning blades that can cut through the toughest lumber, trim, aluminum, or other non-ferrous metals, improper use of miter saws can cause serious injury. With a blade tip spinning at 140 miles per hour, it takes only a split second to change the course of your life forever. Fortunately, miter saw accidents can be avoided if you're careful and are well prepared. Being prepared means paying close attention to the message delivered in this video, carefully reading and following important information and advice contained in the instruction manual, reading and observing the warning labels on the equipment, and using good common sense. It's important to note that this presentation by itself is not meant to replace the vital information provided with the product. It's critical that you completely read and understand those instructions, safety rules, and warnings before using the miter saw, and refer to them from time to time just to brush up on your product and safety knowledge. The Power Tool Institute is committed to promoting the safe and proper operation of power tools. PTI has produced a series of videos on the safe operation of electric power tools. This training video is one of many steps taken by PTI members to help you prepare for safely using miter saws and other power tools. All power tools manufactured by PTI members are manufactured in accordance with nationally recognized safety standards. You should always look for a mark of safety from Underwriters Laboratories, Canadian Standards Association, or other nationally recognized testing laboratories when purchasing a miter saw or other electric power tool. But before we zero in on miter saw safety, it's important to review some basic safety information that relates to power tools of any kind. General safety instructions are covered in PTI's video entitled Power Tool Accidents. They can be prevented. Please view this video before operating any power tool. It provides instructions in keeping your work area safe, electrical safety, developing good personal work habits, and proper tool use and care. Now let's focus on the miter saw, where we'll look at safety from every angle. First, miter saws are intended primarily to cut wood or wood-like products. They must not be used with abrasive cutoff wheels for cutting ferrous material, such as metal bars, rods, studs, or similar materials. Cutting ferrous materials on a miter saw results in excessive sparking and will damage the guards and may overload the motor. However, if cutting materials like aluminum or other non-ferrous metals, use only saw blades specifically recommended for non-ferrous metal cutting. In using a miter saw, stability is one of the keys to safety. Be certain to secure the saw on a level, firm work surface before using. This reduces the risk of the miter saw becoming unstable and tipping. Get rid of debris. Clear away all tools, wood scraps, and other items both in front of and behind the fence. The only thing that should be on the miter saw table is the workpiece. Period. Remember, the tip of the blade is spinning at close to 140 miles an hour and can make dangerous projectiles out of any loose objects. Before you start cutting, it's important to plan your work. Make sure you have adequate support accessories, such as clamp tables, sawhorses, and table extensions to accommodate workpieces longer than the tabletop. Workpieces longer than the miter saw table can tip if not securely supported. If the cutoff piece or workpiece tips, two things can happen, and both pose danger to the operator. It can lift the lower guard or be thrown by the blade. Always keep your hand a safe distance away from the saw blade in accordance with the instruction manual. Keep your hands away from the sides of the blade. If you apply uneven or excessive force, you may slip into the blade. Do not hold only the workpiece. Support part of your work holding hand on the fence or table. This will prevent your hand from moving if the work should move during the cut. A workpiece that is too short to keep your hand a safe distance from the blade must be clamped. Do not, repeat, do not use a miter saw to cut pieces that are too small to be securely clamped. Do not use another person as a substitute for a table extension or as additional support. Unstable support for the workpiece can cause the blade to bind or the workpiece to shift during the cutting operation, pulling you and your helper into the spinning blade. The guard system on the miter saw was put there for a reason, to help keep your hands away from the spinning blade. There is no reason to ever tamper with the guard system. It's plainly an invitation to disaster. Make sure your guard system is not damaged and is working properly. In cutting with a miter saw, there is clearly a danger zone to avoid. If you avoid it, you will greatly reduce the chances for injury. Here are several points crucial to safe miter saw operation. First, the proximity of the spinning saw blade to your hand may not be obvious throughout the entire range of the saw's path necessary to complete the cut, and you may be seriously injured. Always keep hands out of the path of the blade. For example, placing your fingers over and beyond the fence may appear to be a safe distance away from the blade when the blade is up at the beginning of the cut. But as the cut is completed and the blade is down, your fingers may end up in the path of the blade. The second example is to never cross your hand over the intended line of cutting. Supporting the workpiece cross-handed, such as holding the right side of the workpiece with your left hand, is very dangerous and can result in an amputation. As the blade is descending to complete the cut, the portion of the blade closest to you can cut into your forearm. These examples are especially true when cutting sharp miter and compound angles. Now let's look at actually cutting with the miter saw. There are three basic types of miter saws. They are the standard cut miter saw for miter cuts only, the compound miter saw for miter and bevel cuts, and the slide compound miter saw, which in addition to miter and bevel cuts can also be used to push the blade along the rails. This affords a little more width in the cut. There are some basic safety rules which apply to all three types. Check the operation of the saw guard and brake to make sure they are not damaged and are functioning properly. Before turning on the saw, make a dry run without and with the workpiece in place. This will assist in projecting the path of the blade. Then adjust the workpiece and clamp or secure the workpiece parallel to and against the fence before turning on the saw. Turn on the saw and let the blade reach full speed before contacting the workpiece. This will help prevent the blade from grabbing the workpiece. After completing the cut, release the trigger and wait for the blade to stop before returning the saw to its rest position or removing or adjusting the workpiece. Do not feed the workpiece into the blade or cut freehand in any way. The workpiece must be stationary and securely held or clamped to the table and fence. Never use a miter saw for freehand notching. The cutoff piece must not be jammed or bound in any way against the spinning saw blade. If confined, the workpiece could get wedged against the blade and be thrown violently. This is particularly important when using a length stop. Hold securely or clamp the piece between the stop and the blade. And finally, if the workpiece or blade becomes jammed or bogged down, turn the miter saw off by releasing the switch. Wait for the blade to stop and unplug the miter saw. Then work the jammed material free. By continuing to cut with a jammed workpiece, you could lose control of the workpiece or damage the miter saw. Now, if you're using slide action cutting, first pull the saw head assembly away from the fence until the blade clears the workpiece, or to its maximum extension if the blade cannot clear the workpiece. Make certain a clamp, if used, does not interfere with the guard and head assembly. Second, turn the saw on and wait until the blade attains full speed. Then lower the saw and push it through the workpiece. Pull cutting may cause the blade to kick back unexpectedly, driving the blade towards the operator. For plunge action cutting with the slide compound miter saw, slide the head assembly towards the rear as far as it will go and tighten the slide lock knob. Then turn the saw on and wait until the blade attains full speed and lower the head assembly to make the cut. Warning: if you fail to tighten the slide lock knob, it may cause unexpected kickback of the blade, causing possible serious personal injury. Now, there are some special safety precautions for cutting bowed, round, or irregularly shaped items. When cutting an irregularly shaped workpiece, carefully plan your work so it will not slip, twist, rock, or pinch the blade and be torn from your hand. An irregular shaped workpiece must lie flat against the fence or the table along the intended line of the cut, or be held by a fixture that will not permit it to twist or slip while being cut. If the workpiece is bowed or curved, clamp it with the outside bowed face toward the fence. Always make certain that there is no gap between the workpiece to the fence and between the workpiece to the table along the line of the cut. Bent or warped workpieces can twist or rock and may cause binding on the spinning saw blade while cutting. Rods may roll while being cut, particularly when cutting angles, causing the blade to bite and pull the work with your hand toward the blade. For round materials, such as dowel rods or tubing, always use a clamp or a fixture designed to clamp the workpiece firmly against the fence and table. Be extremely careful after the cut. Blade breaking action of the saw may cause the saw head to jerk downward. Always be ready for this reaction when making an incomplete cut or when releasing the switch before the head is completely in the down position. Above all, remember this: reaching under a coasting blade is very dangerous. If you follow the basic safety procedures outlined in this video and in the instruction manual and product warning labels, you'll get maximum performance from your miter saw and reduce the possibility of a terrible accident with lifelong consequences. If you've used a miter saw, but not in some time, it's a good idea to watch this video again and reread the instruction manual and product warning labels, just to refresh yourself on the proper use of this very useful member of the Power Tool family. The Power Tool Institute and its members are doing everything possible to assure your safety. That's why we've produced this and other videos and literature which are available from the Power Tool Institute. But in the final analysis, your ultimate safety is up to you. Here's one angle you should consider. Always think safety. It will help assure success and satisfaction in all of your jobs and projects.